Good morning, everyone. Today is our last for those kids, if you did not get a kids bulletin, they're back there. There's no junior church today, so all right. If you want to get a kids bulletin, we'll give you a piece of candy for filling that out. But today is going to be a little bit different. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy it. In our sermon series titled Building Faith, the first Sunday we looked at Acts 2, 42 through 47, and we saw that the church focused on four main things: the disciple or the apostles' teachings, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. But in that, they devoted to each other, teaching us we cannot do church alone. It's not about just us individually. Then we looked at Abraham, the father of the faith. And we saw his resume included some incredible great acts of obedience. Yet, there were times that he followed doubt and fear. And through Abraham, we saw that God can look past our problems, our past. And he sees our potential, our promises, and our possibilities. Last week, we looked at the great big boat builder of Noah. And we read in Hebrews 11 how Noah obeyed God. He took a leap of faith. He went ahead and built something that God said, this is going to rain, and he'd never seen rain before. He'd never seen this, but yet he trusted that even though he didn't see it, he can trust the Word of God. Now, to set the stage for this last scene, this last sermon, I'm going to need some help. So, first off, I need a kid volunteer who has not been up here before. Let's see here. I'm seeing. Wow, there's only like a few. Yeah, what's your name? Come here. You're going to help me do something. Oh. I don't know where the ball went.
The blue one? Which one? The blue one?
The pink one. There was a string with the pink ball. We're not going to do that. Okay, you're going to help me do something else then. It was over here, and it must have it was right here. There was a pink ball right here. I am so on top of it. Okay, well, we're going to... That failed. Okay, do you know what the law of the pendulum is? I don't know. Check in my office area. This will work. This will work. We'll do this. Okay, come up here. We'll just do this. Okay, what's your name again? They can't hear you. Jenna. Say hi. There we go. Okay, the law of the pendulum has everything to do with friction of the air and gravity. All right? A pendulum can never, when you release it, it can never return to the same height that it was released from. So, hold this up to your nose. Don't let go. Hold it straight. Pull it all the way up to your nose. Keep going. That's not to your nose. Touch your nose. Okay, now when you let go, it'll swing out and it won't hit you. Okay, let go. Oh, you backed up a little, didn't you? Why'd you back up? Huh? Because it scared you. You didn't want to get hit in the face. Okay? And you're pretty new to... Here, try it again. You're pretty new to this idea, aren't you? Okay, let go. See? She blinked a little, but that was good. And that's a pretty good test of the faith in the... Should we do this with an adult? And really test it?
Dustin.
Dustin, I'm going to need some help, and you're going to help me on this. Okay, there is a little white ladder over there by that chair. If you would go get that white ladder, you know who's coming up, so come on up, baby. And Dustin, can you help me get our next pendulum? Yeah, go up there and put it right about where you were standing. You want to grab that? Don't let them see the picture. We can hear you. I know you can hear. I forgot about that.
Am I going to swing it to you?
No, we're going to test it. If you would open that up.
That's a big louder.
I know. You know, if Jason would have built it,
Oh, did you hear that? Who built this? If Jason had built it, I would trust it. Okay, so what we're going to do, and you're going to help me on this. Vicky, you get to stand up there. Vicky. Yeah. We'll find out. Grab the paint. You're fine. Grab the paint, bring it to her. You're going to have to scoot your ladder this way. Forwards, right there. Okay, now get on. Let's see if it, can it reach? Oh, it's kind of heavy, isn't it? We need to back this up a little. I don't want it.
What if it's
Did you test this?
Probably not.
Okay, can it go up to your?
Close.
It's closed. You're not going to get dirty. Okay, that was too much. Will it touch you? Okay. So, here's the law of the pendulum. If it starts this high and it swings out, it will not come to your face. The only time it would hit you is if you lean forward. Do you trust the law of the science here? See how it's bending? That's not right. You gotta keep it. There you go. Oh, a little tight there, isn't it? Do you want to take a half step back? Okay, you ready? Everybody? When you're ready, you tell her to let go. Jeff.
Bruh.
Why did you flinch? All right, thank you. You can sit. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Vicki. Can you get this? All right, good night, Brock. Can you guys come up and help tear this down? So we have room again.
Teenagers don't flinch.
Here, no, here. And help carry the ladder. We'll get the tall part, doesn't it? Excellent, man. All right.
Good job, Vicky.
So, yes, you did exactly what I wanted. Did she really trust in the law of the pendulum? No, she flinched. Now, why did you flinch? You said that was close. Okay? There are so many times that it's going to come, it's going to seem close, and that's what we're going to get to today. Faith is not a complicated doctrine. Just like that wasn't complicated. You drop it, it swings out. When it comes back, it will not return to the same point. It cannot. Because of velocity, of gravity, and friction. All of those are working at it. And if we would have let that pendulum keep swinging, it would have kept swinging until it was at absolute zero because of those three factors pulling on it. Now, when we come to faith, as that illustration just points out, it is easy to understand that if I drop it, it will not hit me. But when we practice it, we can flinch. Because now it's close. Now it's personal. Doing faith can be scary. Doing faith in front of somebody on a structure that you're like, who built this? There was questions. Did you practice this? Did you test this? Of course I did. That's why I picked Vicky. If I hadn't, I would have picked Croc. I believe that's why God dedicated the entire chapter of Hebrews 11 to show us what real faith looks like. Even when people are flinching, even when the world is trying to get close to them, they can still stand there. And we can follow the same thing. We've looked at Abraham and Noah, two people who you'd expect to see on this list. But those are not the first examples of great faith, of people who stood there, even though the world got close, that God put on this list. And if you turn to Hebrews chapter 11, you're going to see the first two names, Abel and Enoch. Now, I don't want to be sounding disrespectful here, but as you read through the Old Testament, these two guys generally are not going to be the ones that catch your attention. Who was Abel? Anybody? What? Son of Adam, the brother of Cain. Second born to Adam and Eve after they were kicked out of the garden. Abel made a sacrifice to God that was pleasing to him. He was beaten to death by his brother, and end of story. Wow, that was great. Thank you. Okay, who's Enoch? He went to heaven. Yeah, he did. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more. What? What does that mean? There's a lot of imagery there that I want to know about. So in the book of Genesis, these two men take up a grand total of less than 10 verses. Noah gets 4 chapters. Abraham gets 14. Moses gets 4 whole books. So why would God choose the chapter 11, Hebrews, the heroes of the faith? Why would he start it with these 2 guys? Why would they be setting the scene? Why not jump to the better known heroes instead of going to the footnotes of the lesser obscure characters? Most of you think you're ordinary folk. I'm not ordinary. I know that. And I'm not thinking I'm extraordinary. I'm a little abnormal. I know that. We think of ourselves when it comes to faith, though, as ordinary. There's no way we can measure up to Noah or Abraham or Moses. Those were great heroes of the faith. They did great deeds that changed and challenged the course of human history. I'll never be like that. And because of that, I believe God took Abel and Enoch and he put them in the beginning of the list so he could say, look, you don't know these guys that well, but I consider them heroes of the faith. It's not about what you see in them. This chapter 11 is all about how God sees them. These ordinary guys. So what makes them distinctive was that in everything they did, they focused on pleasing God. These 2 men, Abel and Enoch, all they did was try to focus on pleasing God. That's what any ordinary Christian can do. Focus everything you got on pleasing God. Consider this question. Why was Abel's sacrifice so acceptable to God? It wasn't because he had the biggest collection of harvest there. It was acceptable to God because Abel gave of his first fruits. He put God first. He offered the kind of sacrifice because he hoped it would please God. That is his whole purpose. He wanted to please God. Why was Enoch acceptable to God? Not because he'd done some dramatic deed, but because he made a deliberate effort to walk with God daily. He lived the kind of life he did because he wanted to please God. When you're walking in your life, are you looking at every step, at every avenue, every decision, will this please God? That's what Enoch did. Abel put the first things into God's hands first. He trusted. He wanted to please God. In other words, I believe the lesson here is this. God is not necessarily impressed by mighty deeds of faith. Oh, Noah built an ark. Well, Moses, he split the waters. Enoch walked with God. And yet in God's eyes, they're similar. They're similar because of how he's impressed by common men and women who day after day have one thought. How do I honor and please God today? And then live to do that. The faith of Enoch and Abel was the kind which sought to please God in everything. And here's what it is. Hebrews 11:1. Look at this. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. We hit this verse last week when Noah had to build a boat for flood and rain that he'd never seen. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. What do you hope for? Do you hope to go to heaven? Do you hope to live a life that is honoring to God, that when you walk into the gates, he says, well done, let me show you home? Do you hope for that? Because if you hope for that, faith is the evidence of that in how you live right now, in what you do right now. I read the story of a woman who told about Christmas toys she bought for her daughter. This was several years ago. It was the really famous Tickle Me Elmo. Okay, many of you will remember, oh my goodness, that craze, it was just nuts. And she brought it home, and the younger daughter, it wasn't for the youngest daughter, but the younger daughter found it before she got it wrapped, and so what'd she do? She started playing with this thing. It's still in the package, you can hit it, and tickle me. Well, I did that a little too well. So she let her play with it a little bit, and she said, okay, it's time to wrap it for your sister. And she said, I want to wrap it. So she let the little girl wrap it. Now, if you watch me wrap a present, I am trying to get the corners perfect. I want to make it match. Even I like to make it look really good. Now, if you let some other people in my family, let's just say Austin, wrap it, it's done. I don't care what it looks like, because to him, it's not the package, it's what's inside. He doesn't care about the paper. Well, this little girl wrapped it, and it didn't even cover the entire gift. You could see that it was a Tickle Me Elmo. But the mother said, it's okay, she wrapped it, and she placed it under the tree. The kids, how many kids are excited when they see the presents? Yeah, but Ron's like, I'm excited. Okay, and so if you see something and you know what it is, do you just sit there and go, oh, I know what that is? Or do you go touch it? You're going to go touch it. Well, you know what these girls started doing every time they walked by the tree? They kept messing with this Elmo while it's under the tree, and it's moving around, rustling the paper, and they were laughing on it. Every chance they got, they would make it move. They'd make it laugh. They'd activate it. And they'd watch the paper jiggling as it was dancing underneath it. The kids would laugh, and the dog would growl because it never was used to the strange toys. The kids were sure what was in it because they could catch a glimpse between the wrapping paper. They knew, even though it was covered, even though there was not promised, even though it wasn't convinced, they knew what was in there. They were sure of what they hoped for and what they had not yet fully seen. And that is just a little thing of what we get to live with our faith. The things that we hope for, that we have not seen, do we live for that? Do we walk under everything in our life saying, I know you got this, God, and I'm going to laugh, and I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to bring pleasure to you, and I'm going to make Satan growl, because he is not excited about this faith that I know is leading me to heaven. The kind of faith Hebrews is describing is that kind of faith. A faith that not only believes he exists, but that when we seek him, he rewards those who earnestly seek after him. It's a faith that anticipates that if I do what God desires, not only will I find him, but he's going to reward me, and I'm going to see those blessings multiply, pouring on me, reaching out and going forth and touching all the other people and facets of my life. Once you've gotten used to seeing God at work, you'll develop this excited anticipation. You'll begin to look forward to seeing his hand in your life. A grandmother took her 3-year-old granddaughter into her lap and began reading from the book of Genesis. And after a while, she noticed that this little girl was unusually quiet. The grandmother asked, well, what'd you think of what I read, honey? Oh, grandmother, she said, I loved it. You just never know what God's going to do next. Do we have a faith of things that we hope for, even though we may not have seen? This kind of faith Hebrews is talking about. It's being sure of what I hope for. And I live in anticipation and excitement of that, of what God's going to do next. I am thrilled. I'm excited. You can't contain it. Now, we do need to be clear something, though. As exciting as living a life of faith can be, it is not like chanting some magical incantation. Faith is not some magical pill that you take and presto changeo. Life is better, it's painless and trouble-free, no struggles or difficulties. Scripture doesn't teach that, okay? For example, Hebrews 11. Who's the first person God used as a faith example? We said it? Oh my. Have you forgotten? Abel, thank you. Abel, he had the faith. He stepped up, and what happened to him? He was killed. That's not a really nice life. He was killed for his act of faith, what he hoped for. His brother killed him. Chapter 11 of Hebrews 11 is a catalog of some of the greatest men and women of faith in Scriptures. And it ends with this powerful statement. Now look at this. Hebrews 11, 32 through 35. And what more shall we say? Now you cannot read this monotone. Okay? This is the power right here. Okay? For what time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weaknesses, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrection. Some were tortured, refusing to accept release so they might rise again to a better life. Is that the kind of faith that you want to have on your resume? Are you ready to say, I'm doing that? Don't you want that? Don't you want to say, yes, I'll stop the mouth of the lions. Yes, I'll make the enemies flee. I will stand here no matter how close that gets. Preach it. Yeah, that's, can you see him now? Oh, yeah. Now, let's finish this part. Starting verse 36. Others suffered mocking and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were killed with a sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering about in deserts and mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. Are you willing to live that faith? Oh yeah, give me the first one. Give me the victory, the power. But we don't get to choose which one. Abel chose to please God. And in this world rewarded him with death, which means he got to go to heaven a lot sooner. Enoch chose to walk with God, and he was able to walk with God all the way to the pearly gates. You and I have to choose to just follow him, and then he will give us either that first one or the second one. See, we have hope, faith in the things we don't know. But I know he is going to reward it. What Hebrews is telling us is faith is not like some child's toy. It is real life. And while there are exciting possibilities in our walk with God, there is real danger in this world. Especially danger for people of faith. When you try to stand up for something that God's principles say, and you stand up and proclaim it, you're going to be attacked. You may even be martyred. You may not be able to shut the mouths of the lions. That's not your call. That's God's. Your call is to say, I will stand no matter how close that world keeps coming. Because I believe that he who is in this world cannot touch me because of he who is in me. Especially people of faith. So why would I want to do this? Knowing that living in this world and living my faith would cause just a potential of problems, torture, death. Why would I expose myself to such possibility? Because you don't become a Christian to avoid hardships. That's really what it is. John 16:33. I have told you, Jesus says, I have told you this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. If you put your hope in the world is already lost. Jesus just said it. I've overcome it. It's the loser. So put your hope in me, because I beat it. I beat it with a stick that looks like that. Don't be mistaken. We as Christians will encounter difficulties. And Hebrews is telling us, when you become a Christian, you've entered into one of the most exciting lifestyles to live, known by man. Living a life of faith is a lifestyle. It is not a Sunday morning habit. It is not something you do when you put on certain clothing. It is a habit from the time you pick up your coffee cup till you close your eyes on the pillow. How will you live your life? It is a life of adventure. That's right, right. It is a life of adventure, but it is also a life of danger. But also a life where we can actually make a difference in this world. If I were to come around and ask you, do you have the faith caliber of Esther or David? Would you be able to stand and say, I have the faith, I have the strength of faith like they did? I think most of us would say, that's the next person. So instead of asking if you have faith in you, which is none of these guys have faith in them, they had faith in God. It was so much bigger. David's faced with a giant that's almost twice his size, and he laughs and said, you're nothing compared to my God. Queen Esther's faced with annihilation of her people and even imprisonment. She goes, my God can handle this. Noah, in the face of years, hundreds of years of ridicule, said, there is a rain coming because my God said so. Moses lifted up his arms and the water split even though it made no sense because his God told him to do. They didn't have faith in themselves. They had faith in God. And every one of you, every one of us has that same potential to build our faith. If we would just sit there and say, he said it, I'll live it. And I can stand on that. No matter what that world throws. No matter how close it may come if we want to flinch. My God is strong and he will protect me. So do you have the faith of a David, Esther? I don't know. But do you know God? Do you have faith in him? So we've looked at all of these avenues of what we need to do to build our faith. And here it comes to. You place it all on him, and he does it. Will you do it? You may not think you're the same caliber of Noah, Abraham, Moses, or women like Esther, Mary, and Martha, but when you live a life of faith, God can make you so valuable, he can put you on the top of the list and say, look at my servant here. Look at my prized possession. Look at this kid. Preschool's happening, and we're sending home all these pictures where they paint something. And you know what the moms are doing? Oh, they're putting it right on the fridge and posting pictures on Instagram. You can't tell what it is. But mom and dad are proud because their child did it. How much more so do you want to be on the fridge of heaven? And God said, that was mine. Look what they did. They stood up in faith. They couldn't see what they were doing, but watch when I put it all together. That's my church. So it's time to build a faith. It's time to stand up and say, I want to be counted among the men and women of God. It is time to say, forget it, world, throw all you want. I know the laws of God. And he said, even if it strikes me, he will raise me up. Whether, like Daniel said, whether they eat me or not, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will not burn me. But even if it does, forget it, my God's bigger. And I don't care. My God is bigger. What will you stand? If you need to build your faith, if you need to stand up and say, I'm ready to be counted part of the family of God, will you make that this time? And if you need to stand up and say, it's time of quitting sitting on the sideline of my faith and getting out there and doing it, will you do it? Because I would love to see a chapter of the St. Joe faith people rising up and the world saying, look at the God of those people. What will you do? Let's stand, and if you need to make a decision, won't you come?
Created me